recognize the protocols that have been adequately observed during the course of the day. And just to let you know that the Ministry of Finance that would have spearheaded this effort today, and by extension the government of Antigua and Barbuda, would wish to express our sincere thanks and appreciation, not only to the individuals who would have made presentations here today, but all of you who have attended in what I consider to be good numbers, wide cross-section of individuals attending this session throughout the day. And to see you are here at, what time is it now? At 5 o'clock, and you are still very much here. I want to thank you very much. It demonstrates how important you regard this exercise, how important it is for us to be able to meet in this kind of setting, to get some very, very interesting presentations here today. Some very incisive things were said, and clearly it demonstrated that as Antiguans and Barbudans and friends of Antigua and Barbuda, you are obviously concerned and would like to be part and parcel of the future of this great nation of ours. I would just like to also make the point that this exercise was dubbed the New Economy for Growth and Prosperity. And it is coming on the eve of another budget cycle for Antigua and Barbuda. And what we sought to do, I believe, is to give you, the audience, and I suppose those who would be watching and listening later on, an insight as to what is really taking place, what is driving the process here in Antigua and Barbuda, what we need to be looking at, what we have been able to accomplish against the backdrop of the difficulties that we've had to contend with. Butch spoke about 1991. He spoke about 2001, and he also spoke about 2008, a series of developments which would have impacted negatively on small, open, vulnerable economies like Antigua and Barbuda. But he made the point also that despite these difficulties, the approach adopted by the Sanders Group was to persevere and to always feel that there is a way out of these difficulties. As the challenges bear down upon you, you have to dust yourself off and say, well, listen, we are going to have to hold the line here and do whatever has to be done in order to lay a solid foundation or platform upon which we can build for the future. I would want to believe that from a government standpoint, since 2008, 9, that we have had to face certain realities. Some of these things not of our making, but the reality is that we are part of a global economy that to a very great extent, what happens elsewhere would have an impact on us here in Antigua and Barbuda. Of course, we're aware of the famous saying, and somebody sort of repeated it here today. When someone sneezes in the United States, we catch pneumonia in the Caribbean. And this kind of demonstrates the linkages that are there. And so we cannot run away from those realities. And we had to face that. We had to deal with it. We had to make decisions that I, on reflection, would consider to be very bold decisions. And we called upon ourselves as a nation to make some sacrifices now to lay the foundation for a better short-term and long-term future for Antigua and Barbuda. I know that in some instances, we were taken over the coals for some of the decisions that we decided that we had to make in the interest of Antigua and Barbuda. And I know that politically, some people would argue that some of these things were politically suicidal and that you ought not to address certain things in that way. But as far as we were concerned as a government, we felt that we have a responsibility to be true to ourselves and be true to the country. It is not about our being able only to convince the people of Antigua and Barbuda that we should remain in office. It's more than that. It is the future of Antigua and Barbuda, and what we do now, how that will impact on the people of Antigua and Barbuda going forward. And so we plead guilty if we might have made certain decisions which people felt were too sacrificial and might have been somewhat painful, but I would rather take a little pain now to make sure that going down the road, all of us are in a better position. The country of Antigua and Barbuda is in a better position. And we're beginning to see that that is taking place. We may not have gotten everything perfectly correctly, clearly. The only place there is perfection is in heaven. And I want to remind you that even in heaven, the Lord had Lucifer to contend with. And therefore, he had to make sure that he moved Lucifer out of the way. So even in heaven where there is perfection, you have a little thing to deal with there. So against that backdrop, I am satisfied, the government is satisfied, that we have done the best as we could have possibly done under the circumstances to keep this country afloat. And I want to say to all of us here that if it were not, and you can say I'm playing some politics here, but I mean, this is perhaps the season. If it were not for this administration and our burning desire to make sure, despite the sacrifice, the pain, and the difficulty, if it were not for that kind of determination and the desire to do the best for Antigua and Barbuda, this country would have collapsed. I'm telling you that. As the governor of the central bank, he alluded to it. We were facing a total collapse in Antigua. The economy would have been decimated. Everything would have fallen apart. But we stood our ground. We asked for the support and the cooperation of the people of Antigua and Barbuda. And to a large extent, we got that, despite the detractors and the distractions that came. I want to commend the people of Antigua and Barbuda. For recognizing that certain things had to be done. Now, we're beginning to see that Antigua and Barbuda is on the road to sustainable growth and development. We're turning the corner, and therefore we cannot be in reversal mode here. We cannot be in a reversal mode here. The mode is to move forward and in the right direction, clearly. And so everything is being, is coming together here. And what we have done today is to put this whole thing in proper perspective. You have heard some quite honest, straightforward comments. You have heard Bush about his concept of the whole tax issue. And we are clearly mindful of that. We understand what he's saying. And this is why we have looked at where we're going and determined what is it that we need to do to put us in a competitive position, whether it has to do with taxes or whatever the case might be. What must we do at this time to incentivize and to create the environment in which investment will flow because of the actions and the decisions taken by the political directorate? We are certainly mindful of that situation. But we had to put our house in order first in order for us to be able to do that. So we have reached a point now where we are in a position to be able to make those decisions because we've gone through that process of doing what is necessary to lay a proper foundation. The proper foundation is almost there. I'm not going to tell you that we're out of the woods totally and completely. There's work to do. It has begun. We're now beginning to see our way, where we need to go, what we need to do, and how we must go forward. And so that, for me, is extremely important. We are devising the mechanisms that will allow for Antigua and Barbuda to turn the corner, take off to sustainable growth and development in this nation. It is doable. We have the men, the women, the measures, the ideas, and the resilience in this country to do it. We must believe in ourselves. We must recognize that when time comes for us to be able to make certain kinds of decisions which may be challenging, but what you have to look for is the outcome. What are you hoping to get down the road by making certain decisions now? And so I would just wish to say to all of us that Butch has demonstrated further confidence in Antigua and Barbuda. I agree with him that we have to commend ourselves for being an integral part of the success of the Sandals Group. Antigua and Barbuda played a very pivotal role in that. And I'm sure Butch will be the first to admit that. We were able to start the regional vision of what a Caribbean institution can be. And so we're very proud of that fact. And therefore, that is why 2 years ago, when I came to Jamaica and you invited me to that ceremony, I insisted that Antigua and Barbuda must get a beaches project. It's not a question of if or whatever and this and that. And whatever the challenges might be, politically or otherwise, Antigua and Barbuda deserves a beaches project. And so, you know, I'm very pleased to have participated in the signing ceremony today and that we are moving forward with it. And we are satisfied that all the nuts and bolts, all the T's have been crossed, all the I's have been dotted in terms of what has to be done to ensure that this project assists in the empowerment of our people and our country. Butch knows the importance of that, and we emphasized it and said, whatever we do here, this project must be seen as one that is going to empower the people of Antigua and Barbuda. And I am satisfied, we all are satisfied, that at the end of the day, when this thing becomes operationalized, and when we see exactly what we are getting out of this product, the empowerment of the people of Antigua and Barbuda will be assured. But on a more general basis, you have heard of what we have been able to do with the whole question of addressing the debt stock of Antigua and Barbuda. Some people argue, well, don't worry about debt. Can't be bothered. If you owe, you owe. If you don't pay, just don't pay. Well, let me say this to you. That is not the real world in which you operate. Nobody takes you seriously if you behave in that manner. And I can tell you, from the time the United Progressive Party came to office in 2004, we had to embark upon a plan and a program to restore the good name and image of this country. It had to be done. We had to reassure the regional and international community that we will be a good nation among the community of nations, dealing with our responsibilities as a nation, and to know that we cannot continue to chalk up enormous debts and then walk away from it and say, well, look, sorry, partners, but that's it. Can't be bothered. We have a responsibility to change that image. We have done so. We have moved from a position where we were considered a rogue and vagabond state to a state that is respected among the community of nations. And if it's one thing that this administration can say it has done for Antigua and Barbuda, is to return the pride, respectability to this nation. So anywhere you go now, you can lift your heads high and say, well, I'm proud to be an Antiguan and Barbudan or a friend of Antigua and Barbuda. In addition to that, we have sought to put this economy in difficult times, in extremely difficult times. A lot of people don't like to hear about numbers and statistics and so on. I mean, somebody will tell you, well, you talk about these numbers and so on. They don't mean very much to me when I can't put bread on my table, or I can't do this and I can't do that. These things are totally unrelated to me. Well, I suppose to some extent one could argue that. But the point is, unless you're able to come to terms with those kinds of issues, you will never be able to get out of your difficulty. So even if you feel, well, look, these things are of little or no concern to me, you just go and fix it. Well, you can't fix it unless you fix the other thing. You can't put it you're in a position where you're able to deliver unless you're able to tackle the real cause and problem that places you in this position. I listened to the intervention of well, let me describe her as the executive director of the Board of Education. And she made a rather interesting intervention today, which I thought that it's important for us to, have a somewhat different perspective. Clearly, governments are in the business of delivering services to people. That is what you elect a government to do, to govern and to provide things for the people. At the same time, however, it is important for the people themselves to be part and parcel of this process, and to find ways and means of ensuring that they can work with government to ensure that certain things are delivered. It is not expected in the normal course of things for the government to be the mover and the shaker of every conceivable thing. All of us, people, we must be able. And someone pointed out also that comparatively speaking, Antiguans and Barbudans are pretty much endowed with certain types of abilities. It's just that sometimes we do not feel that we are capable of doing certain things. But I'm satisfied that we are. And we are creating the environment and enabling environment to allow for Antiguans and Barbudans to be able to come up to the plate and deliver as a people. We need to have that degree of confidence in ourselves. So I was particularly interested in that comment, because as the government moves forward and tries to provide some guidance, some leadership, it is also expected that you get in response from the people who have the ability, and we know a lot of them around the place, that they can generate ideas, they can come forward, they can see themselves. The whole question of entrepreneurship, for instance. I mean, why do we think that a lot more people cannot be entrepreneurs in their own right? And they themselves can be the creators, the innovators, they be part of the process of employment creation in Antigua and Barbuda by using the skills and the intellect that they are endowed with, that they have. And so we've got to do this thing together here and make sure that it works for the benefit of Antigua and Barbuda. I was very pleased that I was able to be here for the entire period, so that I got a sense of all what was being said. I got a sense of how you were reacting, the questions and the comments that were made. It was very informative. It has given us, I would imagine, an understanding and an appreciation of how you're thinking, what is driving you. And then it is for us now to take this on board and see to what extent we can shape that, and as we plan for the immediate future, that we would have had the benefit of your insight. 2014, God's willing, will be a very, very exciting year for Antigua and Barbuda. Exciting in many ways. Exciting in many ways. But from the point of view of plans and programs, and we're hoping that we'll be able to take this country, as you would have heard of some of the plans that are there to be unveiled as we move forward and we seek to deal with the situation. We're turning the corner. 2014 is the year for Antigua and Barbuda, coming out of the difficulties and challenges that we have. Everything points in that direction. We therefore call for the complete support, cooperation, and continued understanding of the people of Antigua and Barbuda, members of the business community, the ordinary citizens, public servants, anybody who has anything to do with the governance of this country, in your own communities and so on, the villages. I mean, we're all in this thing together. We're all in this thing together. And so I just want to urge all of us to stay the course, be true to your country, be honest with yourselves, and say we cannot be in reversal mode at this time. We cannot. We got to move forward, and therefore we have to have a clear vision in terms of where we're going and what we need to do individually and collectively to keep us on course for the transformation that is clearly taking place